Good evening, and you're very welcome to yet another episode of the League of Ireland Women's podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. Myself, Breifne, Earley, and of course, as always, Aaron Clarke joins me today. We've got a pretty special show today. We're going a little bit left of centre for a women's soccer show. Trust me, it all makes sense. We'll explain it all in just a couple of moments. But we have Olympic boxer Grainne Walsh joining us for a chat for the next 20 minutes or so on the podcast. Why is she on a League of Ireland women's podcast? Well, she's a former League of Ireland women's footballer. She spent 3 seasons with Shamrock Rovers in her teens. Aaron, you looking forward to this?
I've literally just tweeted in the last 20 seconds. I cannot wait for this podcast.
Excellent.
You threw this name to me a couple of weeks ago, sort of said, how would you think about this? And I was sort of like, at the start, I started thinking, okay, how will it work? And then I was like, you know what? An Irish Olympian boxer, someone who's done it, who's, had to work the hard way to get to a major competition, to get to a major Olympics, who's won medals at Europeans, boxed in world championships, boxed all over the world. What more can I say than, yes, let's go, please. We all watched on when she qualified in Bangkok. We all sort of seen the pictures from that were streamed across the social media and stuff like that. But listen, what a way to have a Wednesday. I can't wait.
Absolutely. Well, listen, with no more further ado, let's bring her into the conversation. We will be talking, of course, women's soccer later on. The Avenir Sports Cup quarterfinals take place this weekend. We will be previewing them. We'll be looking back at the weekend's action as well. But it's all about Grainne this evening for the first half of the show, at least. Grainne Walsh, you're very, very welcome to the programme. And unfortunately, she has frozen on us, which of course, no, there she is. Grainne, how are you?
Sorry, I don't know whose end this is on, but the two of you start buffering at the
No, it's fine. We're good. You're very welcome. Nice to see you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited for this myself.
Good. Well, of course, what I didn't say is we have crossed paths before in a football context. Of course, you were part of that under-16 St. Francis side back in 2010, which feels like another lifetime ago, I'm sure, for both of us. That got to the cup final, beaten by Colga. We won't dwell on that too much. But yes, it's an Olympic summer. First of all, congratulations on qualifying. And what's going through your head for the last few weeks and for the next couple of weeks ahead?
Guys, I don't know what's the story with this.
You're fine. Keep going. It's good.
We have you back. It's fine.
Sorry, what was that? I missed what you said. Sorry.
How's your life been for the last month or so, and how are you looking forward to the next couple of weeks in terms of Paris Olympics?
So yeah, the last few weeks have obviously been insane. I spent a month in Thailand, 2 weeks in a holiday resort, 3 hours south of Bangkok for a training camp. That's where you're preparing for your competition and stuff. And then we went back into Bangkok City and had the qualifiers there, 4 fights, qualified for the Olympics, and it's just been mental since I got home, really, with different things going on and trying to celebrate with my family and stuff, and had a little get together at the house there at the weekend, and just seeing what it means to all of them as well really just sheds light on the whole thing. Like you obviously bask in the whole glory of it yourself, but to share it with other people is the real kind of cherry on top with the whole experience. So it's been mad, but some of the best weeks of my life, definitely.
As somebody who's come through that Irish amateur boxing system, you've had the knockbacks, you've had the disappointments. What's it like when you get that result in Bangkok to say you're going to be an Olympian?
Well, I think the reaction probably says it all. Yeah, it's mad. It's a mad one because I'm 28 now and I've been on the Irish team since 2016, kind of full-time probably since 2018. But yeah, I've been knocking on the door for a long time and just, wasn't getting the rub of the green when I needed it, and had different setbacks with injuries and my own immaturity as well, I'll be honest. When I was younger, just probably didn't take it as seriously as what I do now. But, you learn as you go, and I'm just glad that I learned all those lessons and woke up to address them all while I'm still in my prime. So I would have been kicking myself forever if I got to a retirement and then was like, I wish I did X, Y, or Z. So yeah, my journey has been insane up and down, but it all worked out this far anyway, thank God.
Can you tell me a bit more about what you mean by that, Grainne? Because as a 16-year-old, you seemed fairly together in that squad. You were probably the one that was most focused, and I'm including players who've gone on to play for Ireland and play in the National League here for years. You just seem to know what you wanted out of life. I know boxing was kind of on the radar back then at 2010. It was just kind of easing your way into it. It was mentioned in some conversations with you, but in terms of the football, that was your focus, and you just seem to get it. What do you mean when you say you were a bit immature, made poor choices, or whatever that might be?
Well, I'm thinking from a footballing perspective, I was always different when I was younger, and I didn't mind doing things differently to my friends, whether it be not going to parties, going out, all that sort of stuff. I always prioritized training, and I loved the life of being an athlete, and it's what I wanted to do from when I was a kid. And even when I go into schools now, I always tell kids that when I was young, I wanted to be an athlete in whatever field it was. And when I grew up, that's what I knew I wanted to do. So I feel very fortunate to be able to do that now. But then when I started boxing, I think I probably got things a bit too easy at probably the first part of my boxing career. I found boxing late. I was 16, and progressed pretty quickly. But in doing that, I probably took it for granted. I was only actually speaking about it today. I took the first part of my career for granted, like, you know, being on funding and getting sponsorship and getting sent to tournaments all around the world without much competition. And then when you lose it all and you have to try and get it all back, that's when you get it the second time. You're like, right, I'm going to hold on to this, like the chunk of gold that it is, because I'm under no illusion that this is a really unique thing to get to experience in your life, and it's a short window, and I want to just enjoy every bit of it and not be looking back with regrets when I do retire, because once you do face that retirement thing, it's not something that you can go back to. So that's just a lesson that I've learned along the way. But yeah, my own immaturity at the start was probably just from getting things a bit too easy, I'd imagine.
When you say that though, and you know, you find that you trigger that, what was the trigger point for you to sort of be like, I need to do what I need to do? Because there's no doubt about it, even though you may not have been as successful, you were still looked upon as quite one of our really strong athletes or really strong boxers, even when you first come into that. So what's the sort of turning point to getting you to where you've got to now?
It's definitely all the injuries I had. Like I feel like things happen for a reason, and all the setbacks, although I had so many injuries and I thought, right, okay, I need a bit of luck somewhere along. I honestly thought I was just the most unluckiest person in the world. And I'm born on Friday the 13th, and I thought that was something I was cursed. But no, thankfully, looking back at all the injuries, they all happened exactly at the right time to teach me a certain lesson. At the time, I obviously didn't see any of that, but the beautiful thing that is hindsight, looking back at it all, it was all meant to be. And especially when I did get my hand raised in Bangkok, it all made sense. So yeah, it's just, I did have to take the longer route in terms of figuring things out and getting closer to where I needed to be, but we got there in the end.
What's the next month looking like for you? Are you in camp? Are you at home? Or what's the situation for your next maybe 6 or 8 weeks as you come up to the Olympic Games?
I'm currently in the Carlton Hotel where we're based for training. So I'm on camp Monday to Friday every week in Dublin. We train in the Irish Institute of Sport. So something, again, that I probably took for granted when I was just in there every day. Then when you kind of get it taken away from you through injury and stuff, when you get it back, I appreciate it a lot now. And yeah, we train here 5 days a week, 2-3 times a day. And it's it's obviously fairly hectic. And the quick turnaround from Bangkok, we had a week off. I ended up getting sick and run down. Obviously, that happens kind of after competition when you're on such an emotional roller coaster for 4 weeks. The travel, everything factored in, you come home, your body just completely crashes. So, yeah, I had to take it a little bit handier last week. And then I've been flat out again this week, and I'm sparring in the morning and bits and bobs. So, yeah, you're kept going, definitely. There's more media and stuff to do, obviously, with the magnitude of the games and everything that goes with that. And media days and all those sort of things. But yeah, we're going to Assisi in Italy actually for a training camp on the 3rd of July. And then we're home for like, I think 4 days, and then we fly to Paris. So I've only actually found that out in the last half an hour, to be honest. So everything does be yeah, it is. So yeah, no, it's crazy. The schedule is crazy, but I feel like even when I didn't qualify back in March in Milan, I'm delighted I didn't, because I got the experience in Bangkok, 4 extra fights, all them things that I learned, and the momentum now going into the games with confidence sky high and fitness and everything. So all things considered, everything worked out the way it was supposed to.
You've mentioned a word there that I was going to sort of bring up in a different light. Momentum. You talk about being in the Irish Sport Institute. You're rubbing shoulders with some other female athletes who are doing amazing things on this planet. What's it like being a female athlete at an elite level in Irish sport right now with the momentum that Irish sport has?
Yeah, all you have to do is just look at the results in the boxing alone. We have a woman qualified in every weight that's available, and we're the only country in Europe to have that. Actually, the next closest is Italy. They have 5 out of 6 qualified, but they have a population of 50, 60 million maybe. So we're a small country, but the women can fight. Let's be honest, the women can definitely fight. And then aside from the fighting, obviously, as you said, rubbing shoulders with all these amazing athletes, it can only breed for positivity and everyone just kind of pushing each other on, and seeing the success of the ones over at the European Athletics last week. I think it's a very exciting time for Irish sport in general, and this close to the games, we're in a really good position and trying to just stay on job with the task that's in front of you and not look too far ahead, because that can be easily done as well. So trying to just everyone stay in your own lane and focus on your own strengths.
Let's turn our attention to football for a minute, because that's obviously the basis of the show. You grew up obviously in Offaly. You can see that by the jersey. You're a brave woman wearing a GAA jersey on a soccer show to talk about boxing, but talk about mixed signals. But obviously, rural Ireland, it's a strong tradition. But you grew up. What was life like? Did you play all the sports? Did you play Gaelic football? Did you play camogie? Or was soccer and then boxing kind of the two standouts for you?
Yeah, I'm actually not a big woman at all, to be honest. Weird coming from the country and wearing a GA jersey, but yeah, I don't know. I think I tried all sports when I was young. I was always a really active kid, and my parents allowed me to explore any options that I wanted. And I think it's important for kids as well to kind of dip their toes in a few different ponds and see what tickles their fancy. And for me, yeah, it was definitely soccer growing up, and that was the dream I had as a kid, was to be a professional soccer player and all them sort of things. But I don't know, I think in the soccer thing as well, I lacked a lot of self-belief, and in the early part of my boxing career, I can say the same thing. I've managed to knuckle that down, thankfully, in the last couple of years. But yeah, I always did grow up playing sports and was heavily involved in everything. And then there was no history of boxing in my family at all. So people always wonder where I got this from. I think just growing up, idolizing Katie Taylor and seeing the success that she had in soccer as well, that was probably what, I made the comparison originally. And I used to shadow box around the kitchen when I was a kid in the opposite stance. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. But 2012, Katie Taylor was going to go to the London Olympics, and she was coming down to open a new boxing club that was right across the road from my house. And I just decided I'd give it a go. While the soccer season was off in the summer, I needed something to keep me fit. So decided to kill 2 birds with the one stone, try out the boxing and get to meet Katie Taylor. Ended up falling in love with the sport and tried to juggle the two for 2 years, and ended up giving up the entire soccer dream to pursue a boxing dream. And I'm not regretting my decision right now.
What's that moment like when you first meet Katie Taylor? I've been lucky to do it twice. I met her first, and I'm not going to lie, I was working to get an Earley game in Tallaght Stadium, and I seen her coming in, and I was like, I'm determined by the end of this game to get that photo. Now I managed to get it, and then I met her at a press event. Like, what's that like? Because she's someone who we all idolized growing up. She's someone who changed the way of women's boxing. She done it in the amateurs, then professionally as well. She's done an awful lot. What's that like?
Yeah, I went from being Katie's #1 fan to teammate and still #1 fan in the space of 4 years. When I first started boxing was 2012, and then in 2016 I was on the same team as her, going to the World Championships. So that was a huge thing for me. trying not to make a show of myself because I still like was completely starstruck, even though she was a teammate. But yeah, it's mad. Like just having someone like that, I think role models play a huge role, and looking up to her, just the way she handles herself in day-to-day scenarios is nothing short of than admirable. So I'm lucky that I had someone like her to look up to and aspire to be like. And look, I'm obviously well aware that we're in the position we're in because of the doors that she opened, and I hope that we can set the trend now for the next generation coming behind us, and it's a constant chain effect. But yeah, Katie Taylor obviously flew the flag at the start, and we're reaping the rewards of that. So yeah, having her to look up to was special.
Definitely. Just want to ask a follow up to that. What's it like now that Grainne Walsh is a role model for so many young kids in the country?
You've silenced her. You've silenced her, Aaron. I think that's maybe the bit of humility coming through there as well. Grainne, in terms of the under, I suppose back in the time, I had the pleasure of both coaching you and Katie briefly at very early stages around that time of both your careers and seeing you kind of come through as developing athletes. And you always had something a little bit extra that you kind of knew you were going to do something special. I think I might even have told you that after that cup final where we got beaten in terms of where you were going to go. And was it always in your belief that you could get to this level back then, or were you genuinely not really in that belief that you were able to do this?
No, I to be honest with you, I knew I was capable of doing great things in sport because I had that determination and I had that discipline to go that extra mile. My problem just came with delivering on D-Day and in the high pressure situations, and that's what I found when I didn't excel in my soccer career was because of that. I was probably hindered a little bit by fear in a sense and maybe shying away from the big occasion or whatever. But yeah, and as well at the start of my boxing career. But since coming back, that whole thing about everything that I had to learn through injuries, coming back from injury, I'm just aware that we have this one shot to do this, and I know what I'm capable of. And yeah, I've just been able to push all that other things to the side. And to be honest, it's much different in an individual sport. You carry all that expectation and pressure on your own shoulders. And I think that's what actually swayed me in the end to pick boxing, was having all that responsibility on yourself and not having the option to blame X, Y, or Z. And you're in the ring, it's just you. You don't have anywhere to run or anywhere to hide. And I do miss the camaraderie, I suppose, of having teammates, although obviously we're a big team in Team Ireland, but it's much different. You go into the field of play on your own. But yeah, having the contrast and the experience of both is actually something that I'm glad I do have the experience.
Just to follow up on that, because obviously it's an individual sport, so you rise or fall based on your own performances. But how tough is it then when it does come to, and I know we're not going to get into the specifics of selections, but that's out of your hands to a certain extent at times. And sometimes it's a bit weird in how they pick players or athletes going to boxing events, or as well as other sports. Athletics probably similar as well, swimming even the same. But in boxing, it gets a lot of high profile. But as a personal, forget about the other personalities involved, but how does it affect you when maybe you feel like you're worth a shout and you just don't get that nod to be on the team for whatever tournament you're planning?
Yeah, I think boxing is a different sport in that regard, that there's so many things in boxing that are outside of your control. Your work ethic and all that sort of stuff day to day is, and your attitude in particular. But when you're in, when you get selected, when you don't get selected, all of that is out of your control. But as well, I was on the end of a bad decision there in March, and there's nothing you can do about it. And everyone was asking me, can you not appeal that? And there's no one you can go to complain about these things. And I'm not the first to get a bad decision, and I sure as hell won't be the last. So yeah, those things can be very disheartening, and they can often turn people away from the sport because it is so disheartening. You put all this hard work into it, and hours and years of dedication goes into it, and then when it comes to that defining moment, it can be taken away from you through no fault of your own. But yeah, putting yourself in the best position to get selected, and then when you do get the nod, to be able to produce on the biggest stage, that's where you really have to grab the bull by the horns and not shy away from it, because those opportunities don't come around every day.
I want to ask about that, a little bit about that, because in Gaelic football or in a soccer, a selection doesn't go your way, your teammate puts their arm around you. In a selection, or if a decision doesn't go your way in a boxing competition where there may be limited teammates, or teammates may be fighting later that day, How do you go then to bring yourself after that disappointment in Milan to work harder, to get that result that you get in Bangkok? Because there's no doubt, going into Bangkok, it's last chance saloon. You know you want to be at that Olympics. So how do you get that extra maybe percent to get there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think after Milan, you can go one way or the other, and it's, you have to make that choice yourself, and it's kind of throw your toys out with the pram or rant on social media and blame the world for your problems, or do the opposite. Like from my perspective, and what I did after Milan was, obviously I felt absolutely shit after Milan. I was thinking there were so many things that I was worried about. Was I going to get the opportunity again? Like, my weight division in Ireland is stacked with talent, and girls obviously dying to get the opportunity to qualify for the Olympics, as anybody would. So I was afraid on the back of that decision, maybe I'd never get to call myself an Olympian. Other girls would be getting an opportunity that I wanted, and there was just a million things that were out of my control. But I had a week after I came home from Milan. I screamed, I cried, blamed the world in the comfort of my own house, around my family, around my close people, and God bless them. They really had to be there for me, and that they are the unsung heroes in all this as well. So yeah, that's what I did that week. I just got over it and allowed myself to feel exactly how I felt, because I think if you try to deny that and bury it all down, it will come out eventually. So I made the calls to the psychologists and the people that I needed to speak to that week, and then the following week I was back in training. So that Sunday night, drew a line under it, starting a new week. It's a new phase. I have to put myself in the best position to be able to get picked, and I was actually comfortable enough. There was nothing I could do about that decision. As shit as it was, there was nothing I could do. So I had to just move on. I did, thankfully, and the coaches had enough faith in me, and that gave me such confidence going into to Bangkok, knowing that they believed in me and being able to produce the performances that I did. I'm very proud of, and it's been a mad few months, but everything worked out for me the way it was meant to.
I know it probably feels like a lifetime ago, but what was your experience in the League of Ireland? Any fond memories of your time at Shamrock Rovers?
Yeah, look, my whole career playing football, I have nothing but fond memories. And looking at the girls playing now, like I'd follow the Irish team and stuff, and I'd see them in around the institute and stuff sometimes when they're in camp, and I would keep a close eye because I have a personal connection there. And people always ask me, like, would you go back, or when you retire, would you go back then? Definitely, with my injury history, I'll be well retired boxing before I'll ever step on a pitch again. So I'm not going to be tempting fate in that regard. But yeah, I do watch on a lot, and I have nothing but fond memories looking back at that whole period of my life. But as well, I don't regret stepping away from it either. Like I think if you try to put your 2 feet in 2 different things and chase 2 dreams, you end up progressing in neither. So for me, I had to just make a call, and the one that served me at the time was the one that required the discipline that I felt I could give more of and get the most out of, and thankfully I can.
How hard was that decision though?
Yeah, it was obviously hard. Yeah, I had to take a long time of considering all options, and you're kind of looking into the future. I try to stay in the present as much as I can, but when it comes to a decision like that, you really have to weigh up options that could potentially happen down the line. And I think the particular year that I was playing with Rovers, I was doing my leaving cert, and my dad was driving me up to Dublin 3 days a week for training, and then on a Sunday for a match. And like that, I was putting in huge efforts, and there was girls on the team that were as well, but there was some that weren't, and were turning up to games hungover, and different things that just not having when I didn't have all the control, it stressed me out, because like I felt like I was given, I don't know if you're following what I'm trying to say, but yeah, like I just feel like the individuality of boxing suited me more in that regard, that like I didn't have anyone else to blame, and the responsibility ultimately came down to me, and that just suited my personality more. But yeah, the decision was obviously so hard. Like,
of course, Rovers dropped out of the league after that season. Did that help make that decision less of a kind of, I've got to leave something, it's not there anymore anyway?
Yeah, and the investment wasn't there initially. Like I see Rovers now, the women's team are absolutely flying. the investment is there now. It wasn't back then. They just wanted to have a women's team, but just to have a women's team, not to actually put anything into it. So that made the decision a lot easier as well. If I was with a team that was firing on all cylinders and in contention for titles and stuff, it would have been harder. But I didn't feel like I was in a really competitive thing where I was being as challenged as I was in the boxing. And I think on the success of Katie winning gold at the Olympics and everything, it probably made my decision a bit easier.
Well, I'm glad you brought it back to that, because that's kind of where I want to wrap up. You talked about being Katie's success as being an inspiration to you, and you comparing yourself to her. Obviously, unfortunately, we all look at medals as a sign of success. Is that something that might be in your future? Is that a target for this games, or is that a bridge too far for you at the moment?
No, I'm in a very privileged position that I can set goals and goals that are achievable. And although for other people they may not seem achievable when I say what my goals are, I believed all this time that I would be an Olympian, and other people were like, right, Grainne, calm down. 2 years ago I was staring retirement right in the face, and no one gave me a chance of coming back. So the fact that I've even come back has been a huge thing for me. But yeah, you qualify for the games, obviously that's one thing, that's my dream. But you take that off the list, and now it's on to setting your sights on something different. So obviously I'm aiming for the podium now. And I was only saying this as well today. There was years there that I would have went to a tournament and said, I don't mind who I draw. But in the back of my mind, I'd be like, well, geez, I don't want to draw her, or she's good. I wouldn't mind not having her in the first fight. Now I actually don't care who I draw. I feel like people would be fearing drawing me. You know, I feel like on my day, with the tactics and the coaching staff and the belief that they have in me and the belief that I have now in myself and the support that I have around me, I feel like I'm a real formidable opponent for anyone. So medals are definitely not too far of a ambition for me, and it's definitely something that I'm aiming for Paris.
Have you talked to anybody about the Olympics? Because obviously the Olympics is something that you're there to focus on competing, but it's also something that comes around every 4 years, and it's very hard to qualify. Have you talked to anybody about getting that balance of enjoying it while going there to strive to deliver for the best you can?
Yeah, I just had a conversation actually with the performance director, and I was saying I have my own interpretation of what I imagine the Olympics to be like. Obviously, I've never been as a spectator or an athlete, so it's new on all levels for me. But I think you're either going satisfied that you qualified, or you're going to chase bigger and better things. And I think it's a waste if you just qualify and then that's it. You're just going to kind of make up the numbers and all. I'm an Olympian, blah blah blah. Although I am delighted and absolutely so grateful for that. I just, like I said about being in a privileged position to be able to aim higher, and I feel like that's definitely something that I'm aiming to do. And medals are we've 10 boxers going to the Olympics, record number for an Irish team ever, and I'm sure that the plane will be a bit heavier coming home with silverware, hopefully.
Obviously Ireland with a great track record in boxing. It should be hopefully a great couple of weeks for you and Team Ireland at the games. I've been to World University Games twice, and it's quite similar in terms of Athletes Village. Once you're done, best party ever. I'm not going to lie. You've been spending 15 years planning this. It is the best party ever. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm kind of scared actually. I'm scared for that because I haven't had a drink in over a year in preparation for all of this and trying to increase my chances. So yeah, I'm not even thinking post Olympics, but yeah, I've heard the stories about the Olympic Village and everything once competition is done. So
yeah, it is. It's a nut house. But at least you'll have a bit of silverware maybe around your neck to kind of keep you weighted down and keep your feet firmly on the floor. Grainne, an absolute pleasure to have you on the show this evening. The very, very best of luck. We're delighted you took the time out of your busy schedule to join us. We really do appreciate it, and good luck in Paris.
Thanks very much, lads. Appreciate it.
Grainne Walsh there. A nice little throwback to the early days of the League of Ireland as well, Aaron. What an athlete, what a performance, what a story as well, though.
To be honest with you, Breifne, some people aren't going to like this. That's my favourite guest we've had on all my time doing the show. Plain and simple. In absolute awe of our, she's somebody who's so humble. Like, I loved when I asked her about her inspiring people, and you could see her face. It said it all. Like, when you sort of look at that and you sort of look at people like this, and yes, it's hard making that decision. And she's right in what she said. When Shamrock Rovers back then, it probably made the decision a little bit easier for them to sort of walk away from football. But she's right. She could have retired 2 years ago. Could have walked away from boxing. With, things weren't going well. Like, you look at, she talks about selection, beating Amy Broadhurst in the Irish Senior Championships. It just showed she's on the form of her life. She's going to go to Paris. She's going to do well for Ireland. And listen, you won't have to ask me. You can ask me Avenir Boxer on any week if you want. I won't complain. I think it's definitely my favourite interview we've done so far.
Good. Well, listen, the rest of the League of Ireland will be very annoyed to hear you say that. It is, of course, the League of Ireland Women's podcast. We better talk about some of this year's League of Ireland content, and of course, some big games last weekend. The biggest one probably in Talca Park, Shells versus Galway. I know you were at the game, Aaron. What a goal from Rowan McLaughlin. That little touch out right, the run from Christy Gray, the pull back, and just she stuck at the back of the net. It was I suppose old school Shells, really, just in terms of that, but a great game from start to finish.
The funny thing is, you haven't mentioned the best part of the goal.
Oh,
weaker foot.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like, to do that with a weaker foot, like, to me, like, I posted a picture on social media the other day of one of the Kiva Keenan challenges, and it just showed it was a real old school League of Ireland game. It was a battle. It was one of them that it was no inch was given from either side. Yes, it was physical at times, but it was it was within the rules. It didn't go overboard, and it was just a battle, a war of attrition. And I thought it would have been between the two sides. I thought that although Galway scored a lot of goals this season, I thought Shell's defence would have had them there or thereabouts. The one person who probably doesn't get enough credit in that Shelbourne team is Maggie Pearson in the six this year, not playing in centre back, just sweeping little Roman left and right. I thought Ava O'Mahony was very good for Shells. From the Galway side, from the Galway viewpoint, like, they struggled to create clear-cut chances, but that's because Shells probably didn't let them. But then again, apart from the Rowan McLaughlin chance, there wasn't many that were clear-cut. Yes, it was an nil-all drop. Some people, if you don't like that sort of game, it wasn't the most exciting game. But it was a brilliant game to watch because it was two teams who were well set up to match each other and sort of went at each other without actually getting in that final third. I think that if you were to ask me, the fences were definitely the winner on both sides on the day, and I really enjoyed the game. I thought it was a truly enjoyable game for Saturday afternoon. And a lot of people talking about Shells, the fact that it's just a sixth win on the bounce. But like, they've only scored, I think, 15 league goals in them 10 games. So it's only an average of 1.5 league goals per game. And they put, I think, 4 or 5 past Cork. So they're not scoring a lot of goals. But defences win games when you're not scoring a lot of goals. And I think that's just a sign of the times at Shelbourne, that they're not necessarily reliant on goals, that they know they can go out and they can get results defensively. For Galway, Phil Trill will be disappointed with the fact that they didn't get anything out of that game. But for people to say, sort of, is it a case that Galway have gone off the boil? I don't really think so. I just think Galway have run into a Wexford team and might have hit a bit of a patch last week, as seen this week, as seen on Saturday again. And then Shells, who are just a really, really good team. I still think Galway are going to be there or thereabouts. I think they'll recover from this and they'll sort of get back on the horse and they'll get another run going. Like, granted, they're 5 points behind Shelbourne, but they still have a game in hand to bring it back to 2 points. And I thought it was a really enjoyable game.
Does this open a door for Athlone maybe to put their hand up for consideration for a title challenge as well? Like, they had a good, hard-fought victory over Treaty at the weekend. They left it late, but Chloe Singleton with a decent strike from late on to snatch all 3 points when Treaty looked like they'd done enough to hold on for a point.
Before I answer that question, I've thought about this as well for the last couple of days. I think Athlone are going to, not Athlone, I think Treaty are going to look back at this game and sort of, they're going to wonder, how did we walk away with nothing? They had enough chances even to score multiple goals themselves. They had enough chances to win the game as well. And I thought, they were good defensively as well. Granted, Athlone had some chances, but Treaty to walk away from that game thinking, how did we not come away with something? And they would be full value for something. But it just sort of shows with Athlone, they're just like Shelbourne. They're on that run of six wins on the bounce. And you have to think they lost the opening day of the season against Galway. It's the only defeat they've had. They were brilliant against Peamount at home. At home, they're dogged and determined. And like, granted, Kieran Kilduff probably wasn't happy with the performance, but that's what happens when you're going to play against a side like Treaty who've made massive strides this year. Defensively, that they've been very good. And I think he'll just be happy with the fact that they walked away with that goal. It was a nice header from Chloe Singleton. I think the fact that they got that result, I think, is just the most important. It wasn't their best performance, but listen, they'll be happy with that win. They're 2 points behind Shells. They're the game in hand. The only thing is, the game in hand is against Shamrock Rovers, who are starting to hit a little bit of a patch in the league. So that'll be very interesting to see how that goes on Saturday week. But we'll discuss that game a little bit more next week. But I think Athlone are coming into a nice patch at the right time.
2 wins on the bounce for Shamrock Rovers, 8 goals scored across both games. They were against Bows and Sligo Rovers, though, so you put a little bit of an asterisk on that one. But 4 goals a game, 2 wins. They're back in the midpoint of the table, 6th of 11. It's been a good fortnight for Shamrock Rovers.
Yeah, they're the sort of games, no disrespect to Treaty, DLR, them sort of teams, but they're the sort of games that they should have been winning at the start of the season that they weren't winning. It just shows them when you get that little bit of a run with that little bit of confidence from what they got from that Bows game. Even when they went 1-0 down through the Sarah Kernan goal, they didn't really panic, and they had chances, and then they obviously get the equaliser just before half time. Once they get the equaliser, you know there's only going to be one winner there. I think from a Sligo Rovers viewpoint, I think Tommy Hill will be very disappointed just for when they conceded the goal. If they could have got into half time and sort of reassessed things at 1-0 up, it might have been a bit of a closer game. But Shamrock Rovers had lots of chances, and I think Joy Ralph probably needed them goals an awful lot, just a little bit of confidence considering she hasn't had a lot of success this year. You've seen the chances, and I mentioned it before, the likes of the ones against Galway, where she just shows that little bit of lack of confidence. I think them 2 goals will do her the world of good. Some good link-up play at times from Shamrock Rovers, and I think there still is an asterisk there. If they go and beat Peamount in the All-Ireland Cup this weekend, we may be saying, okay, it's a bit of a thing, but then they go into Athlone and the next. Like we said last week, out of them 4 games that they had coming up, they needed at least 9 points out of potential 12. And I think they're on course to start that in the right direction, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do get it. But it's a better performance from Shamrock Rovers, definitely.
They'll be happy to be out of the bottom half of the table at least. You mentioned Peamount. They had a big game in Dalymount Park, struggled big time at times to get going in this game. It took a Karen Duggan header just in the last minute and a half of the game to snatch a point from a Bows side that probably were worth it, even if maybe there's a bit of fortune with Sarah McEvert's goal. She had what looked like a cross from the edge, from the sideline almost, loop over Neve Birkin in off the far post. Cross or shot?
No matter what we say here, we're going to be in trouble. I say cross. I say cross. I'm sorry, Sarah. I think we've glossed over something here that we probably need to mention, Breifne, and I don't have the stats, but I'd really love them if I could get it. I have a feeling that Erin McLaughlin's goal could be the fastest ever League of Ireland goal. It was after 7 seconds.
No, it wasn't. If you look at the highlights, it says 7 seconds, but the clock wasn't started for the first bit of that, and it didn't start from the first game. So it's a bit more than 7 seconds, but it's definitely.
So I need to start the stopwatch just to double.
Yeah, the clock. Because I was like, God, she scored that in 7 seconds, and I went back and rewatched it. She didn't. No, it's not a whole pile past it, but it wasn't 7 seconds.
I know we've had some goals really, really early in games. I know we've had some goals. A couple of goals within the first 30 seconds. I know we've had that before in games in previous years, but it'd be interesting to know where that ranks. Like when you think about that, and then you think Ellen Dolan missed the penalty. Like for Peamount, coming off the fact that Bows were well beaten the week before, I think it's a good sign of character from Bows. Yeah, for Peamount, it's a bad result. Interesting enough, 2 ex-Peamount players scoring the goals for Bohemians in Sarah McKevitt and Alana McAvoy. The one thing I would say from Peamount is it's that little bit of character. It's that woman again. Karen Duggan pops up when they need him most. Karen Duggan is not short of putting in that big performance at the end. I think from a Bows viewpoint, when you get so late on, I think they'll be extremely disappointed with the fact that they didn't get the 3 points. Granted, it's still a good point for them. The fact of not getting the 3, they'll be bitterly disappointed. I think that's a young side, and I've said that multiple times this season. Granted, they have some players who have a good bit of experience, but even some of the other players, some of the older players, the likes of Lisa Murphy, granted she's one of the older players, she probably has less than 50 National League games under her belt, and they don't have a lot. And then, like, when you compare, I know we'll talk about them in a minute, when you compare it to someone like Avian Clancy at Wexford, who's played her 100 game, and I think she's still 19. You know what I mean? That's a youngster who's been in a squad since she's 16, whereas Bows this year have sort of had to bring in the likes of Ava Brennan. So yes, they've done well. Savannah Keynes, they've done well at times, but it's a massive learning curve. Like, we don't necessarily see the players maybe as ready now for the league as we did a couple of years ago when the likes of Ellen broke through, Leanne Kernan broke through. We don't necessarily see as many.
I disagree with you completely. I think we're seeing players now who are chomping at the bit to get going. For the record, 79 appearances for Lisa Murphy in the Women's League of Ireland. Katie Lovely, 83. So they have some players with a bit of...
Then they've got some, the likes of Savannah Kane having their bench. A lot of players in their bench don't tend to have a lot. But I just think, like, some of the younger players, I do agree with you, some of them are chomping at the bit, but some of them are just that little bit where teams are having to play some of these younger players where they're maybe not ready to fully compete to where they should be. There is the exception. The likes of Johanna Healy's at Chelsea, or Rebecca Devros, your Orla Patrick at Cork, Keola Bergen. Like, there is them. Then again, Bergen is slightly older.
Not a whole pile. Amy Madden wouldn't be a whole pile older either. Like, so there's plenty of youngsters coming through. But then Kiva Flynn is doing all right at Sligo Rovers too. She's been impressive in fits and starts. Jessica Casey has impressed me when she's come on. We did see some players break through. One that springs to mind is Kerry O'Hara. We had her on the show a year or two ago. Huge breakthrough, and hasn't really featured for Sligo in recent seasons. Bit parts here and there, but so again,
that's why I'm of the opinion of let them come as they come.
Yeah,
like, there's no point in rushing them through. That when they come and when they're ready to come into the league, they will be so much better than if we try to force them through and then they have that lull and then they're out of the team. I prefer to see them come as they're ready to play. And for the clubs that are doing that, it works very well. I understand why some clubs are doing it when the players maybe necessarily aren't 100% ready because they have to do it. And that's fine. I understand that it's nearly coming into the league off a baptism of fire. But the ones who are really good will stand out in that baptism of fire after they get over the initial shock of, oh, I'm at this level.
Yeah. Final game of the weekend last weekend was, of course, Wexford and DLO, 3-1 winners. Wexford were in the end. Keola Bergen was on the score sheet for them. Fantastic effort from her from the edge of the box for the third goal, but some really impressive performances here. DLO didn't look that bad in the game either, and in terms of recent form. They put it up to them for large spells of the game, and a decent strike from them as well through Michelle Doonan.
I think when Wexford get the second goal, it's a little bit deflating for DLR Wales because they were in at the score and coming into the game. Like, the one thing I will say about them is the fact that when they go behind, they didn't just fall apart. They got back into it. They're showing steps that they're making. The win last week, the week before has definitely helped them in that sense. But I think for DLR, it's gonna be a long season because of the fact that like, they're another side. There are a lot of younger players in that squad who haven't got an awful lot of experience, that last year were making mistakes that they probably shouldn't be making, but they were having to learn on the job. And I think they're gradually showing little bits of improvement. I think Wexford's showed with the fact that that's the third win in the league in 4 games for Wexford. I think the defeat was the Shells. So that's not a bad little run for Wexford, and the fact that they're into an All-Ireland Cup quarter-final this weekend, they can continue that on if they have a good performance. And for DLR, I think for DLR, it's just going to be about continuing to plod along, continuing to see what they can do, how they can continue to pick up results. There's no doubt I think DLR probably can win 3-4 games this season. I would suspect they potentially, the likes of the Sligos, their potential of beating the likes of Cork. They're well in the games with the likes of DLR, Treaty. Them teams in and around them, I think come the end of the season, we may still see them sort of in and around the Corks and Treaties.
Yeah, I think you mightn't be too far wrong with that. Anything stand out to you last weekend in terms of performances, individual performances? You probably watched a good few of the games. I watched most of the games, and I was impressed with a few players that probably hadn't caught my eye before. But from your own point of view, anyone stand out?
Yeah, it was a a couple stand a couple. I thought Joy Ralph was very good in the game that I was at. I really liked Rola Olasolo when she come on for Galway. Pace. The born. I thought Eve Dawson was very good. I was really impressed with Pearl Slattery on Saturday, with the fact that when she got that yellow card, she wasn't afraid to make that tackle in the box late on, and she was committed. Because she said to me after the game, she's like, "I'm going to put my body on the line." As I said earlier, Maggie Pearce was very good. Who else would have caught me?
I thought Sarah McCabe had a good game for Bows as well.
McCabe was unbelievable in the first half against Shamrock Rovers. Unbelievable. I thought she gave Scarlett Heron an absolute nightmare. And then Bows sort of gone away from getting the ball to her. Like, when she's running at you, she's one of the best runners with the ball at her feet. And she's probably going to kill us for saying that we thought it was a cross, but she's going to tell us it was a shot. She meant it, but I think it's great, and that we're talking about individuals. Keola Bergen as well. For me, she's just continuing to go up and up and up. I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see the likes of herself in and around them Player of the Month awards coming really soon, because she's been super consistent for Wexford the last number of weeks, and good to see Rihanna Jarrett getting some more minutes as she continues her comeback from injury.
Yeah, I thought Jenna Slattery had a good game as well for Galway at the weekend.
Super
consistent.
I actually tweeted how far away is she from an Ireland squad, because if we're seeing the likes of Ian Vangan, I think Roma McLaughlin's probably still a little bit away just in terms of fitness. I don't think she has that 90 minutes in her just yet. I think Ava O'Mahony could potentially be someone who could come into the squad this window with the fact that Katie McCabe being suspended for the game against Norwich. I wouldn't be at all surprised if Ava O'Mahony comes in as another left back option. I thought she's been very good since coming into Shells.
Yeah, we're not playing Norwich. We're playing in Norwich against
Norwich.
England. Sorry, but we all knew what you meant. Let's take a quick look at the league table and see where the teams lie after that round of games. So we look at Shells on top, 2 points clear of Athlone with that game in hand. Everybody actually has a game in hand on Shells. They are the last team to get their bye week. Galway 5 points off the top, and then a bit of a gap back to Pease on 15 points. They have a 9-point gap, which they may or may not bridge. Only 11 games left in the league, of course. Wexford a few points behind them, while Shamrock Rovers and Cork on 10 points, Treaty and Bows on 8, and DLR Waves on 6, with Sligo Rovers propping up the table, still winless. The only team left without a win in the season so far, but they have come close on occasion. But it's going to be a long season for most of the people down there in the showgrounds. Tommy Hewitt finding life maybe a little bit more difficult than he might have anticipated, Aaron?
I always thought, and I said last week, I thought it's a difficult job. It's a completely different style of football compared to Steve Feeney. Like, you seen how long it sort of took him to turn that loan around. I think it could take him, if he stays the course, it could take a couple of years to sort of turn that Sligo Rovers around. It is a difficult job. Your only hope this season is that they get one, if not 2 wins this season. I don't want to see any team go win this. It's the one thing that I really don't like, and I don't want to go back to them days of the Kilkenny Uniteds when they were struggling for wins, and the old Cork when they went a couple of seasons where they only won 1 game in a couple of seasons. I don't like that. I think the league has moved on a lot from that, so hopefully Sligo can pick up a couple of results.
Yeah, and of course, they've lost a few players this season, maybe from previous years. Emma Hansbury not as involved on the field as she was in recent years. Lauren Bowles is no longer with the club, so they have brought in some talent, but the loss of Casey Howe as well is a big loss for Sligo.
Oh, it's a massive loss for Sligo Rovers, and I don't think we can estimate it. And you also have to look as well. Emma Doherty's only played 5 games this season.
Yeah,
that in itself is a tally's player up top. Sligo really need someone like that, and
Sligo. Did you say Tally's player rather than Tally's man?
Tally's man. Well, I'm going to be absolutely hounded out by you for the next week for the last couple of minutes. But you can't afford to miss a player like that when you're the likes of Sligo. You have to have all your best players if you to have any chance. And with Emma not playing very much, and I think Emma Hansbury last year probably had her best year in the Sligo Rovers jersey as well for them. So with players like that not necessarily involved, good to see that they are sort of being competitive in these games. But it's just difficult at the minute, and it is hard to see where that first win is going to come at this stage. And you're sort of hoping the sooner the better that it does come, because you don't really want to see it sort of linger on and continue to linger.
Yeah, well, good to see some players coming back from injury as well.
Leah Kelly in particular.
Leah Kelly back for Sligo, but more importantly, I think Fiona Owens is like a new signing for Shamrock Rovers. She came on for the last couple of minutes on Saturday, and I think she's a solid right back. She takes no prisoners. Was at Athlone for their few seasons, did well, got the move to Shamrock Rovers, but hasn't kicked the ball for them until this weekend because of that injury. So good to see players of that quality back in the fold as well.
I'm interested to see how that's going to work, because I was a little bit surprised they went with that route in terms of signing Fiona Owens, but it makes a lot of sense for them now when we look at where they are right now, that they could definitely do with a player like that. The start of the season, I started thinking, okay, it's a bit of a strange signing, but 100% she's going to be somebody who they're going to really need. They're going to need them. I'd be interested to know how far away Savannah McCarthy is. I see at times she's just be posting the odd photo on social media. There's no real football photos just at this stage, so I'd say she could potentially be a little bit away before she's back as well. And like someone like that, like the only I will say, and probably how we probably haven't given her credit, and I've said on the show a couple of times this year, I think Rovers need a bit of experience in midfield, because if they could get somebody in experience in midfield for them, I really think Aoife Kelly is going to take another 2 or 3 steps on. I think she's been very good for them this year. I think if they could get someone in there to give her a little bit of assistance in terms of experience, I think Aoife Kelly could have a massive second half of the season for Rovers.
I don't disagree with you on that. In terms of this weekend and the second half of the season, and the chase for one of the 2 cup competitions kicks off in earnest for the knockout stages for the quarterfinals of the Avenir Sports All-Ireland Cup. 7 teams from the Republic of Ireland, 1 from the North. Will start there. Linfield host Wexford at 2 o'clock in Belfast. Can Linfield win this? Well, obviously, yes, they can win this competition. Have the players? Probably. It's going to be a bit of a minefield for them if they want to keep the Northern Ireland represented through the next couple of weeks.
Before I discuss any of these games, I'm just going to go on the record and say what I say this week could be completely wrong. These are 3 50-50 games that can go any way. I have a feeling we could get 2, if not 3 penalty shootouts this week.
Well, bear in mind, you did say 3 games. The 4th quarterfinal is not going to be played until the following week. It's Galway versus Treaty, and that now replaces their league game that was due to take place that day. The league game will probably happen at a later date. But let's talk about the 3 games. Let's start with Linfield. Linfield versus Wexford. Probably one of the nicest draws Linfield could have hoped for. It's a home tie. Wexford have been hit and miss a little bit with form this year. They've started to come into a bit of form. The likes of Ellen Malloy and Keola Bergen and Rossiter and so many more really hitting a nice stride in the league. Can they carry that form in, or will we see Hugh Strong maybe putting out a weaker side, or is that all out the window now when we're at the knockout stages of the competition?
With 2 games, I cannot see any team resting any players this weekend or giving players an opportunity this weekend, especially considering how tight the games are. Do you know, this is slightly off tangents a little bit, but it was only recently when I was up in Belfast for the Northern Ireland game that I actually realised where Midgley Park actually is, with it being right on the back of Windsor Park. It's a great opportunity for Linfield. It's probably the draw that they would have wanted at home as well. I think that's the biggest thing. Wexford's on Astros. They haven't played much on Astros. Granted, they probably have done a bit of training on Astro this week just to get used to that. I think Linfield are hitting a bit of a stride in the league themselves. When they played the earlier rounds of the competition, they maybe hadn't played as much games, so they're in a better position now than if the quarterfinals had been 6 weeks ago. The question for Wexford is, how are they going to travel? That's the question. If Wexford travel and come out of the gates the way they come out of the gates last week, Wexford will win the game probably 2-0. If they don't, they could be in a dogfight, and that's where you don't want to get drawn into a dogfight with a team like Linfield. And if that happens, I think it could be a really close game that it could go all the way to extra time penalties. But my gut is telling me that Wexford will probably just come out on top.
Shells and Athlone, they would know each other well in cup competitions. 2 FAI Cup finalists of the last 2 years.
Last 2 President's Cup.
Yeah. Do you want to take a pick on this? Could go anyway.
All right, I'll tell you what I have predicted on this. I think this one goes to penalties. I think this one all goes all the way to penalties. If a team is going to win and score, if a team is going to score multiple goals in this game, it is Athlone.
Yeah.
I think if Shells are to win this game, I think Shells are going to have to keep the scoreline down. Shells this season have shown they haven't scored a lot of goals. they haven't shown that they got the prowess to sort of go and cut teams apart. But then again, Owen Warren could just pull a little rabbit out of a hat and decide, do you know what, we're going to play completely different. We're going to sort of add that extra dimension in. I think from a Shelbourne viewpoint, now that she's not playing due to injury, I think we've realised that even the likes of Megan Smith-Lynch, how much of a big loss, considering she was very good from last year. She was in the team of the year last year. Like, Megan has been brilliant, and for her not to be involved all season due to injury, she is very close. Yeah. Don't think she's going to be this week, but if she's not, she will definitely be in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I would say, because looking at her, she's on her final stages of her training programs. I wouldn't say she's far away, and that'll be a big addition for them. But in terms of this game, I don't want to sit on the fence, but I definitely think we're going to go all the way to penalties, and that's where it's going to get interesting.
On commentary last week, they did mention that she was out for a kick around at half-time and that she looked reasonably healthy. Obviously, it started the return to play protocols, but I'm sure we will see her before the end of the season. This weekend might just be a little bit too soon for her. Final game of the round, Shamrock Rovers and Peamount United, 4 p.m. Tallaght Stadium. It's always a good tussle, local derby. So many former players, particularly Peas, playing for Shamrock Rovers. There's always a little bit of wanting to beat the friends, or the frenemies, we'll call them, for 90 minutes on Saturday afternoon. Yeah,
it's going to be a very, very, very interesting game. I'm trying to think back to last year's All-Ireland Cup. Did Shamrock Rovers beat them in Tallaght? If I'm not, they beat them in Tallaght last year in the All-Ireland Cup, because they played, Peamount played Wexford at home on the first day of the season. Shamrock Rovers beat them in Tallaght, and then Peamount were at home to the Northern Irish, to Glentoran in the third game. Yeah, I'm nearly certain. So they beat them in Tallaght. They haven't beat them in Tallaght in the league. I think if you'd asked me this game a couple of weeks ago, it's probably a different mindset. I know when the two league sides played, and I'm gonna, because I know you're gonna say something if I don't say it, that I did predict Shamrock Rovers would win the league game when the two of them met. It's a different ball game at this stage in terms of where the teams are compared to that performance. Sive Doyle missing for Peamount is a massive loss.
Yeah, just looking at it, was 2-1 to Shamrock Rovers, goals from Jamie Thompson and Lauren Kelly. So yeah, they won that game, and then a late injury time consolation from Chloe Maloney was a 2-1 win for Shamrock Rovers in Tallaght last July, around the same time last year. So you're predicting that again? Shamrock Rovers win?
I don't know. That's the problem, and I'm, I'm like, I'm always willing to throw my neck on the block. I really don't know at this stage, because is it a blip? Is it a purple patch for Shamrock Rovers, or was it just the two results we expected? Peamount's result against Bows last week wasn't great. I would say Shamrock Rovers are favourites going into the game. It all depends on what Peamount team starts the game to whether they can get through to the semi-final. But I would definitely say Shamrock Rovers are favourites, just because of Peamount's just late. Peamount have just been lately in terms of the squad.
Yeah, that is it, folks. That is it. The predictions for this weekend. Penalty shootouts galore, Aaron reckons, in the Avenir Cup quarterfinals. Listen, from a neutral point of view, you gotta love the penalty shootout. I know they're horrible to lose, but
we really enjoyed the cup final penalty shootout last year.
Well, listen, that's it from week. Thank you so much to Grainne Walsh. She's a busy schedule. She's coming up to the Olympics. It's great to have her on and have her available for the first 20 minutes, half hour of the show. Very insightful into the life of an athlete at that level, and of course, she's walked in the shoes of most of the players in the league as well for 3 seasons. With the initial version of Shamrock Rovers, she was part of that squad back in 2011, 12, and 13. So a decade ago now, as she said, a lifetime. In another world. Aaron, it's been a pleasure as always. We'll enjoy the games the weekend. Where are you heading yourself? Going to a game?
There's only one game for me to go this weekend. Athlone and Shells and Athlone. If Peamount and Shamrock Rovers had been maybe a 6 o'clock, I'd have probably scooted across the Tallaght after. But with a 2 and 4 o'clock, it's just impossible.
Yeah. Logistics are difficult. Aaron, listen, as always, pleasure to have you on the show. We'll be back next week. We will talk to you then.